Here on The Colour of Country Life, our last chat for 2022 with the member for Grey, Rowan Ramsey. You've had your travel plans change a little bit, Rowan. Now you've got to go back to Canberra on Thursday.
Yes, apparently. We had late sittings, attempted late sittings a week ago, and the government had to knock off and go up to Sydney for testimony to Gough Whitlam and getting through legislation. And now, of course, we're coming back and they're having another jam through session on Thursday around their latest plan on energy. And I've had to cancel, obviously, a number of things I'm doing around the electorate. I understand that the Labor Party is pulling people back from overseas because you drop the bomb at Christmas time and everybody goes off in every direction. In fact, I've just come back from a delegation in Europe last week. It was only 6 days. And many members are doing similar things. It will cost millions of dollars to bring Parliament back on Thursday, but I'll be there.
Yeah, I guess the federal government would say it's justified because they're talking about the energy costs and trying to do something about it. I understand the opposition's going to oppose the package that's being put forward. What are the reasons?
Well, I think you've got to look at the timeline here, Rizzy. The government went to the election promising a $275 cut. I think nearly 100 times the Prime Minister offered that. So the war in Ukraine started in February. They were promising that in the period leading up to the election in May. When they got there in May, and then another 5 months, and we had a budget. You would have thought in that 5 months they might have considered the cost of energy. Instead of getting a $275 cut, they told us that electricity was going up 56% and gas 44%. Now, after they passed the budget, at the final week of Parliament, they suddenly decided they need to do something else about this. Now, that's looking like panic mode to me. We've got a government that is not making rational decisions. The Prime Minister, Albanese, is keen on comparing his government with Bob Hawke's. It's much more like Gough Whitlam's. I mentioned the fact that 50 years since Gough was elected. Well, that for those of us who can remember, it was a similar thing all over the shop, grand announcements, no plan, and it all blew up in the end. Now, it's looking a fair bit like that to me at the moment. I haven't seen any legislation yet. I don't think anyone has, and they're making this up day by day. They've floated probably half a dozen different schemes in the last couple of months or so, and they've come up with this one where they're going to cap coal prices and gas prices. Now, I think the biggest problem to lower gas prices, and it is gas that actually sets the price of electricity in the Eastern Australian network, is we need more gas. And so at a time when the government now is going to clip the price of gas, which will almost certainly lead to a lack of exploration and new holes being drilled, because gas will run out, and you need, particularly on the coal seam gas, you need to drill new ones. We are putting a disincentive in the market for gas companies to explore for new gas, and in Victoria, one of the loudest carries on we get from Victoria. They're shutting down coal-fired power plants, and yet they will not allow the prospect and the drilling for new gas, and they've got loads of it sitting underneath Victoria. You've got the situation where the pipes are all plumbed up in southern Australia to take gas from the Bass Strait north into Melbourne and north of that into Victoria. And, of course, Bass Strait's running out, and now you've got disincentive for companies to be drilling down there. It defies logic on almost every front of business decisions, bearing in mind that these companies are owned by either other companies and individuals that can invest anywhere in the world, and a large slice of ownership by Australian mums and dads, particularly through the superannuation funds. The ramifications of what they are proposing go far and deep. I'm not across them all, and I'm pretty confident the government's not across them all, and yet we are going to be expected to vote on as yet unknown legislation on Thursday.
Yeah, and here we are, we're on Tuesday talking about this, 48 hours from when you're going to start debating this bill. It was put to me on the coal front that it seems a kind of token to be trying to cap coal prices because all of the major coal plants in Australia have got their own supply of coal. To what extent is all of this about ideology and about renewables and the government trying to save face?
Well, look, I think they're in panic mode. I seriously just don't think they know what they're doing at all, and they're way out of their depth. The trainer wheels are falling off, if you like. I think this is just the latest of a line of impetuous policy, if you like. And of course, they've got the numbers. So we can argue we can argue for careful consideration for good policy, but we won't be able to stop it in the House of Reps, and it's highly unlikely that we'll be able to stop it in the Senate as well, where they only need one extra vote. And of course, they will find that, I should imagine, somewhere across the crossbenches. So
yeah, because the Greens apparently they weren't on board with this because the talk is about compensation going to coal and gas producers or plants, so that for the fact that their prices are being capped, they don't want any compensation going to those. So you're saying it's dealing in these Senate crossbenches, likes of David Pocock, the Canberra senator, to maybe get it over the line.
Well, look, I guess we don't know, and it's because we don't know the detail of the legislation, and we don't know the detail of any compensation for anyone, quite frankly. And while I would perhaps on one hand, there's part of their plan, which apparently is not going to come to Parliament, and this is this $1.5 billion for the states. And yet, what I'm reading, and once again, I don't believe this is coming to Parliament, they can do this anyhow, is that they're going to not give the money to the consumers, and this is the lower income consumers and small businesses. They're going to give it to retailers and let the retailers work out who the lower income people are and the small businesses are, if you can work that out. Now, given that we've just had these enormous data security breaches, and now you're going to ask retailers to start doing surveys on their customers to find out how much money they earn to see whether or not they're worthy of assistance. Now, I don't know if that's how it's going to work. But then I'm not sure the government does either, and I haven't been given the detail to make any kind of assessment on that plan. But it looks pretty clumsy and hard work to me, and so I think they need to fess up. Of course, the problem is when I say they should come clean, fess up, is that I don't know that they know what they're coming clean and fessing up about. I think they sort of make this up on a day-to-day basis and just hope that the Australian people will be gullible enough to accept it. Now, you cannot make these kinds of changes either to income supplements or to industry and not expect there to be a knock-on effect. And I think whatever those knock-on effects are, we need to fully understand them. And this is rushed, I think, poorly thought about. And while the government will probably have its way, the opposition would be derelict in its duty if it does not point out along the way what I believe to be wrong with the legislation when I get to read it and carefully consider it.
Now, just on the impacts of government policy and whether they've thought it through or not, you've been a regular critic on Flow and other networks about the cashless debit card, the conclusion of that. You were heading over to the West Coast, I guess, to get a read on just what's happening in the community there. That's been cut short by having to go to Canberra on Thursday. But what is the sense you're getting already from the electorate and those parts like Ceduna when it comes to the impact of the removal of the mandatory cashless debit card trial?
Pretty uneasy, I'd have to say. There's been obviously an increase in people on the streets, and a lot of this is anecdotal evidence, and I don't think people should dismiss anecdotal evidence. It's very hard to get clean stats on a lot of these things, but my understanding is that alcohol consumption is up significantly, that gambling receipts, poker machine turnovers, and things like the pokie room is much fuller in the hotel than it was previously. I'm getting reports from increased theft from the supermarket. Now, I'm trying to get to some people while I'm up there over what is now a truncated session, because I've seen this been a good couple of days up there, so I can get over to Canberra to try and find, sort out the chaff from the wheat, if you like, and know and get a clearer picture of what is going on. But the feedback I'm getting into my office is far from encouraging, I must say, and pretty much like I told you so, which gives me no great pleasure at all, because I've said consistently through this process that I think this will lead to the loss of life. I raised this in a question to Amanda Rishworth in the House in our last sitting week. She was actually over there when a fight broke out, a melee broke out outside the hotel through the window where she was sitting. And her explanation to that, when I questioned her in question time, was, well, it was a funeral. Well, of course, you have a funeral, everyone's got to have a fight, don't they? I mean, this is a ridiculous. There's a ridiculous answer and should be exposed as such. Now, If there's increased tension, if there's increased violence, there will be increased violence in the households as well. We're getting reports from family members who do not want to stand up and be public figures, and you can't blame them because there's repercussions. Saying, well, this has put me in a very invidious position. Like I've gone backwards. This is dangerous, and yet because you cannot expect them to stand up publicly, and we shouldn't expect them to stand up publicly. Somehow it becomes anecdotal, and I can't discuss it or use it as a serious piece of argument, if you like, on this debate. So I'll go over and get first down. I'll meet with as many people as I can over there. Lined up over meetings. I'll walk down the street. I'll talk to others. I'll drop in the shops and try and get a strong handle on what is happening. And I'll keep feeding that back to Parliament and back to the Minister. In the end, if things all settle down and it's all sweetness and light and life in Sejuna's good, well, she'll be right and I'll be wrong. And that won't be a bad place because we'll show that we don't need a cashless debit card. But my views are that will not be the case. And in fact, the cashless debit card has been extremely effective. And not only should it still be in Sejuna, it has been my thought process for a long time that it should be rolled out much wider across Australia.
Now, there's been some chatter in the Sejuna and wider West Coast community about Amanda Rishworth's visit you've just mentioned there and how she got home. Flight cancellations, are they happening more often? Apparently she had to commission an RAAF flight to get her out of that region when she concluded her visit.
Yes, why she had to get out in a hurry, I suppose you can ask the Minister. Because people in Sejuna don't get a choice when the flight's cancelled, and I'm hoping the one tomorrow morning's not cancelled as well, otherwise I won't be in Canberra on time. But those RAF flights are pretty expensive. There's very good charter operation runs out of Sejuna. I don't know whether she checked out the price of that before she booked the RAF jet, but I guess that's up for others to ask the Minister, and that will come up in her statements of interest in good time, I should imagine.
Well, Rowan Ramsey, it's been good to catch up with you throughout the year. Have a great Christmas break when Parliament finally rises for the year, and we'll look forward to talking to you again in 2023.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ricky. And the only thing, a little bit of optimism just in signing off, it looks like we're going to get the bulk of our harvest off in good condition across South Australia. We're very worried about the rain, but one way or another, it's getting gnawed off pretty quickly now. I cannot believe how quickly the bunkers have grown in Kimber, in my hometown. It's obviously a record harvest year, and the farms I'm talking to, despite the fact that we had some troubles in January with floods, are enormously happy with the results. And I think not every district in the state, but pretty much most of them are having a pretty good year, and that'll be good for not just for the farmers, for the communities in which they all live in the incoming 12 months and probably the year after that as well. So cheers to them, and everyone take care over Christmas and spend time with your family.
Great point, Rowan. Absolutely cracking harvest, especially over in the west of the state. Thanks again for joining us.
Good on you, Ricky. Thanks a lot.